All right, Coast to Coast Combat Hour. Ed Carbajal here with Matthew Climate Change Hawkins. What's up, Matt? I mean, we have had some time to ourselves in a couple of weeks. We got a lot of housekeeping and current events to talk about.
Yeah, we haven't got that new intro yet for the show that you were looking for on Twitter, but that's gonna
Yeah,
be a little bit.
what's this T-shirt you're wearing? What happened to the suspenders and the shorts?
Yeah, no, yeah, we're not going down that route. But yeah, we haven't had a chance to kind of do a recap and get caught up on some stuff. We've had a nice little run of guests. Um, with that said, some breaking news just from the last 20 minutes or so. It looks like BJ Penn was released from the UFC. Not really a surprise. It had been Dana White basically said it was going to happen, but now he's a free agent on a huge. He doesn't really carry a lot of value other than his name. He's obviously not a contender in a division, but I certainly expect to see him probably sign with Bellator if he wants to fight Bellator PFL. There are some options. Ryzen, him versus Gomi too, is an easy one to make in Japan. So
I feel like that's probably his only options is to go to like Japan and fight in Ryzen or something going on over there. Just because of these days, obviously, these promotions, at least stateside, have wellness policies and behavioral things, and if you're not a high profile guy, that's usually grounds to get you out if you misbehave in any type of you know non PC way or whatever, whatever the case is, if you're not a headliner. So I mean, not that BJ Penn has dropped. Obviously, he's always going to be respected in the sport and stuff. But I mean, when he retired, I feel like he should have just stayed retired. I mean, these last few scraps in and out of the cage is just tarnishing his legacy. So I think it's the right move. I know Dana White was emotional about it when he spoke about it back at the last pay-per-view when Brett Okamoto brought it up. So I mean, it's the move to make. It's the only move to make.
yeah, I just think I think he's been fighting the last few years trying to get a win to retire on, and that just has eluded him. So I don't know. I'm sure if he wants to fight, somebody's going to sign him to fight. Um, the commissions can be worked around, especially. I shouldn't say especially. I mean, hypothetically, if he fights for Bellator or something, he's not fighting anywhere other than a bigger card. They're not going to put him on some card in Oklahoma or something. But
Yeah.
I don't know. It's BJ Penn. People will watch, and but I do think Japan, like you said, is probably the route there where you can fight um, some fights that might be more favorable for him. Um, as far as not the deepest in competition or guys who maybe are a little smaller than him. Trying to make the guys in the typical Japan thing is always use a smaller Japanese guy and throw him at an MMA legend and try to make a name for the younger, smaller guy. So that's always a possibility, but
Mm.
we'll see what happens there. Some of the action, the big action, the news from the UFC last weekend is the Yair Rodriguez Jeremy Stevens fight didn't end as people wanted it to end. An eye poke 15 seconds into the fight causes a no contest as Stevens' eye was pretty jacked up apparently, and he couldn't open it for the doctors to do a real. His eye was twitching. I'm not one at all to ever question Jeremy Stevens'
No.
toughness. I
Yeah.
know. Obviously, when you get into the Twitter world and the social media world, people are always running their lips, but
Yeah. I mean, he was there. You're not going to spend 6 weeks in a country, you know, and that's got its own problems outside of what happened at that event, and just to acclimate yourself to bow out of a fight because you want to go home. You know what I mean? And say that you hurt your eye. No, I don't believe that for 1 second. And I mean, I don't know. We didn't get to do any picks because we've had so many guests lately, but I actually had him winning that fight just because I don't see. A lot of people fell in love with Yair Rodriguez because of that fancy backwards elbow he did to the Korean Zombie, but I think the people are remembering that and not remembering that he was losing that fight up until that point. So when he goes against these, I mean, Korean Zombie type, like these fighters, and even though he had a height and reach advantage over Stevens, Stevens was still just a monster of a man for him to fight at that division and that weight class. So I mean, they got it rebooked for Boston. So I know Nolan's excited about that. Nolan's a Boston guy, so Nolan King from now MMA Junkie, too rich for our blood. But you know what I mean? Like it's something to look forward to, but it's too bad that it's got to happen because of that.
Yeah, it also is only getting. I don't think people are celebrating it getting announced for that, but it's only going to be a 3-round fight now. So in a fight that would likely probably extend beyond 3 rounds, that could be something that changes the outcome of the fight. In a situation where maybe Rodriguez is more active early, and you would think maybe Stevens could land the bigger knockout punch later in a fight or something. So
yeah.
that could change how a possible pick goes for that fight. I saw the original fight kind of as a toss-up. Fan of both guys, so I didn't really wasn't pulling for anybody. I thought it was just going to be a barn burner of a fight.
I was actually pulling. I mean, like, as being Mexican and having it in Mexico and all the Mexican themed stuff behind the event. I mean, I felt bad picking Stevens, but I'm not gonna lie, Yair's behavior, the way he reacted to everything was something was poor in my opinion, and I didn't like that at all. So now I'm glad that I was picking against him, and I'm gonna pick against him in Boston.
Yeah, I thought he came off real immature in handling that. I understand the emotional, putting in all the work, having it headlining in your home country for him, in a rare event in Mexico. I mean, there's only been a couple of those in all of UFC history. So, I mean, I understand the initial emotional dump or whatever you want to call it, but once it settled and it was and they declared it a no contest, and that point, I think as a professional, you just got to stand in there, accept what's happening. I know a lot of people were criticizing the fans, and rightfully so. A lot of people were throwing stuff. A lot of people got hit with beers. I know Stevens got drenched.
Yeah.
You got to be kind of careful in 2019 how you say this, because but people knew that could happen.
Yeah.
It's in Mexico City. It happens in Brazil, and it also happens in places in the United States too.
Any place where you got a big soccer fandom, you got to expect soccer riots. But I mean, not for nothing. Like, I wasn't proud to see a country that my family is from associated with that type of behavior. I just made the joke before we started recording. I thought it was Philadelphia fans, winning in some type of, when they win, they wreck their own city. So it's like, it was just not something I like to see.
No,
doesn't enforce a good stereotype.
No, it doesn't. But I feel like there shouldn't be really any surprise. I mean, as somebody who's watching it, the minute I saw the eye poking, saw that it was beyond anything other than a 10-second, okay, we're going to fire this back up, instantly my mind went to, okay, beers are going to start coming towards the cage. I mean, and maybe that is a stereotype with certain countries. It really is. It's, but it seems to happen, let's say, in some countries more than others in sporting events. But
I mean, in Mexico, I can say this from my own memory and stuff. I remember being in Mexico City when I forgot when Chavez. It might have been when Chavez lost to De La Hoya. Julio Cesar Chavez lost to De La Hoya, and it got pretty crazy. That we were like, let's get at it. Let's go back home. We were watching it somewhere. It wasn't there. It was just we were just watching it in a public place, and it got so rowdy. And I remember I was young, but I remember the funny thing was watching the news with my cousin the following morning to hear that people were so upset about Chavez's loss that they fucking committed suicide. And I was like, you know what I mean? Like I don't understand being that I understand passion, but being that passionate that violence and death and throwing shit around. I mean, you know how I love beer. How dare throwing beer is like a sin to me.
Yeah,
So
you know, I
that
I get that.
I personally was offended for that.
Yeah, no, it was a bad look. But when you have fans that there is a passion in
Yeah,
some of those countries. I've been in Mexico. I was in Ensenada, Mexico when and I was leaving a bar. This again, I was young, 18, 19 years old, and I'm walking down the street to my hotel, and all of a sudden the street turned into a giant, basically thrown together parade. And little did I know that there was a soccer match going on
yeah,
that Mexico had won. And the next thing I know, I'm basically, in what seems like what you see on TV, where there's just all of a sudden thousands of people in the street and people are
yeah.
running up and waving flags, and that was the other side of it. Everybody was happy, and it turned into a giant party, whereas this happened. But it could
Yeah.
happen in Boston. Let's not act like
Hey,
Boston's.
it happened at UFC 205. They had to close Seventh Avenue when McGregor won. If you remember, right there in New
Yeah,
York City, they had to
yeah,
close Seventh Avenue because of the fans were so it was just such a crazy crowd, and obviously they set records that night in the arena. So it happens. It can happen anywhere depending on how deep people are into an event. I mean, not for nothing, that event was kind of light. I didn't. I was actually watching Karate Combat when that was on, and following on my phone. And then I saw everything that happened on my phone, but I was kind of like meh. I mean, I wasn't just like the Copenhagen event. I know we're gonna get into that later, but it's just, sometimes it's a little bit too much, and you know how I am. If it's on ESPN Plus, I'm kind of like, yeah, save that one for later.
yeah. Well, yeah, it was. I was kind of into the Valor bare knuckle that night, so but I was going in between that and then I obviously wanted to watch the main event here.
Mm.
Carla Esparza in the co-main event picked up a big win. Just to update on that, beat Alexa Grasso.
Yeah,
Uh,
surprise
I
there.
I think so, but I think people like to underestimate Carla because she had the title off of the Ultimate Fighter and then got the hell beat out of her by Joanna. But the reality is that she beats a lot of girls, and
Yeah,
she's right back in title contention again. So she's proven to be around for a long time and do her thing in the cage. A younger Mexican fighter, female who keeps making a name for herself, Irina Aldana. She's had a couple tough losses here and there, but again, her boxing gets better and better every time she fights. So she'll also be moving up, likely in the 135-pound female class. But that pretty much ends that kind of event. And like I said, the main event ending in a lot of frustration, and you know. We've seen that recently with this fight and then the Bader Congo fight at Bellator I was at earlier in the month. So I can understand the frustration, although I got 3 minutes of fight out of that as opposed to 15 seconds.
hmm
So I understand the fans' frustration, but obviously, as we stated, throwing stuff at fighters is something that's not a good look, and that's in any sport. It happens in bass. I mean, we had the brawl in Detroit when somebody threw a beer at Ron Artest, so
yeah.
it happens. We also, so you mentioned Karate Combat. I wasn't able to catch that, but that
Oh,
was their return.
yeah. They
Without
crowned their first champion at that event, but I don't know if you read or heard, like there was a near 2 hour delay to them getting started. But
I didn't see that. Where did they hold the event for this one?
that is at an undisclosed location, Matthew.
Oh, this one they didn't tell you where it was at.
Yeah, this is the secret Budokan, the KC1.
Oh, jeez.
But I mean, filled with knockouts and stuff. I mean, there was a couple of boring decisions, and ISKA sanctioned, and so it's like kickboxing. They categorize it. At least that's how they categorize it on SureDog. But yeah, I mean, it was fun, like as all Karate Combat events are. But I didn't appreciate the delay. I mean, apparently they had some issues with the pit that shouldn't be anymore, since this secret location is going to be there, like for the next however many events they're going to have. That's where they're going to broadcast them from, so that way they can get more consistency, which is good. But I don't know why you wait till last minute to set up a pit.
Yeah, well, so that the Valor bare knuckle was Ken Shamrock's debut
Yeah.
promoting bare knuckle. Fun. typical bare knuckle stuff.
That was on Fight TV, right?
Yeah, in theory it was. On Fight
I think it was on Fight TV. Yeah.
Yeah, it was on Fight TV. And then
No, my MMA News had someone there for that covering it. That's why I just hit me now when you said that.
no, they had kind of a pit thing too going, not a.
I saw, yeah.
But it was a little too small. What I thought, because the fighters constantly would end up on the outside of it, and then the ref would have to break the action and bring them in.
Was that a tournament?
There was a 4-man tournament.
Yeah.
Sokaju and Mighty Mo. Mighty Mo won. That was a really good fight, back and forth. And then which Mo ended up winning. He ended up winning. God, I think it was knockout. It went to the very end. And then the other semifinal was Jack May and Mark Godbeer. Godbeer's the British bare knuckle champion, and he put a knockout on May that was scary. It was one. I
saw the highlight of that. Yeah.
That was one you were watching, and we watch a lot of fights, and I've seen a lot of people in my life get KO'd.
Yeah.
And usually you kind of can enjoy it because you're watching a sport, and the dudes wake up and everything's okay. And this was a holy shit moment for me.
Yeah. I shut off. I remember seeing the highlight.
Yeah. I mean, I watched it, and very rarely have I had that feeling like, okay, this might have been over the limit. Like, let's hope that he wakes up.
Yeah.
He had the look of, basically, it didn't look good at all, but thank God after a couple minutes he woke up, he was able to stand up and walk out of the ring. But it was a scary one, I'm sure for him and the promoters and just as a fan watching it. I mean, I've said it before, I like watching fights. The last thing I ever want to watch is somebody pass away in a ring. Like that. So, and then Godbeer defeated Mo in the finals to win that, and it's fun to watch. It's exciting, but like I said, that knockout brought a little bit of reality in. It makes you realize why a knockout like that on concrete might end somebody's life. Whereas thank God they're landing on a mat and with a little padding and stuff like that. And they got doctors and everything right there. It looked like they got on it pretty quick and knew what they were doing. So it was just another event. We get.
You think there's too much bare knuckle going on now? All these promotions trying to pop up. You have BKB, you have that one now, and obviously BKFC is the one that got a lot of fame off of the Malignaggi Lobov thing. You think it's a little too much now? I mean,
well, I think there's some smaller promotions. We had the one promotion that was run by some knuckleheads that didn't pay their guys, so I think that one's out of the mix now. I know we have some events in the UK that are available if people are really into bare knuckle. But in my mind, really BKFC is the only, and now apparently Valor, if Ken Shamrock continues to promote it. To me, those are the only two legitimate big name ones in the United States as where we stand right now. I do know that there's some smaller ones that can be found on the Fight app that kind of not piggyback, but in the same locations, Wyoming, a lot of these smaller states that they have. But it is a weird thing. I mean, as long as there's bigger events, then you got to have smaller ones because guys are going to want to experience. It's like anything. I mean, in MMA, you had to learn how to fight the ground game. Otherwise, you were out of your element. I don't think, unless you're used to getting punched with bare knuckles with no gloves, I think that first punch, it can always turn immediately into a street fight. But when if you're fighting guys like Mighty Mo and Godbeer and guys who have experience years and decades inside of a ring, boxing and stuff, you've got to have some kind of experience in that to know what you're getting into and to be able to fight through the adversities that can happen with the cuts and the broken noses and broken hand. MMA, guys fight through injuries a lot more now in the middle of fight than they used to. I mean, for a decade, if guys broke their hands in MMA, it usually ended the fight. I can't remember the last fight that was ended now with a guy with a broken hand.
No, a lot of guys fight through it. I mean, yeah, it's pretty amazing how the sport's evolved. I mean, you're talking about when I asked you about the multiple bare knuckle promotions, and you mentioned the more places for guys to come up, it made me think about with all the MMA we do have, LFA just lost their home on AXS TV. So, like, I mean, do you have any guesses? I mean, I would think you and I are on the same page in thinking that Fight Pass is where they'd wind up. But I mean, do you have any guesses as far as like alternatives besides Fight Pass where LFA could go? Because they froze their last two events because of this.
Yeah, they're I saw that. I guess this weekend's event, this Friday's, is going on, but they're going to tape it and hopefully be able to show it at a later date. And then the two after that,
Yeah.
one in I want to say like New Orleans or something, and then one in actually out here by me in Riverside got postponed. So I don't know. I mean, okay, so if we look at LFA in the United States, we got the UFC. Let's say we got UFC 1, we got Bellator 2, PFL 3. Are they the fourth biggest promotion in the United States? Am I missing somebody?
I would say yes, just because of their reach and the fact that obviously a lot of Contender Series talent gets funneled in from there, which is why I went that they'd wind up on Fight Pass, because obviously outside of being entertaining for us as people that watch fights and report, follow the sport and the future of the sport, it's a good way for the UFC to scout out new young talent through the regionals, especially if they're under the Fight Pass banner. So if that's their feeder, one of their feeder leagues, then that's where I think they'll wind up. I mean, I don't know if they're going to go. NBC Sports could use some MMA because they lost the PFL to ESPN. That I actually tweeted that out earlier today because I saw that thing from Soares saying that until they find a broadcast partner, they have to kind of wait on things. But I really don't know where they go from there.
Well, yeah, I mean that's kind of where I was going. So they're the fourth biggest promotion in the United States. You got to assume that somebody's gonna want to pick them up. Fight Pass makes sense, but I hope it doesn't happen there. I feel like Fight Pass needs to be kind of weeded out. I know that they have some events on there still, but the $10 a month thing for Fight Pass to me right now is overpriced in the world of
streaming stuff.
In the world of streaming stuff, ESPN Plus makes a lot of sense to me. I know that's another streaming one, but if they're going to carry PFL, to me they can't have too much content. I mean, and LFA has always had a relationship with the UFC, kind of like PFL, so it's kind of almost like a family of under the UFC's banner of kind of the minor league system in a sense. So that would make sense. You talk about NBC Sports. I don't know. Just
because they seem thirsty for MMA since the PFL left. I mean, they've been showing like old what's the South African promotion?
EFC.
They've been showing like old EFCs and stuff like that, and I know CFFC's on they show the rebroadcast of CFFC events on CBS Sports. So there's networks that have the interest that could pick them up, but I think LFA had a really good platform with access. I really hate that that Anthem bought the majority shares of the because they obviously had no intention of keeping MMA and bringing all their other stuff in that they're bringing in Impact Wrestling and I forget what the other one. Because they got rid of New Japan Pro Wrestling too, I think. But man, I don't know. I would say it'd be crazy if they went to the DAZN, but we know that's not happening.
Yeah, that's another one though that they again a little expensive for my taste on the. I like the ESPN Plus thing. I mean, we're talking $5 a month with the ESPN Plus. If they had enough content, it becomes easier to swallow. For me on their service. I can't
they're supposed to do that thing with Disney and Hulu in November. I think was the initial date when Variety reported it about the triple play for $15 a month. You get Disney Plus, ESPN Plus, and Hulu. And if that happens and LFA is included in that, then yeah, Fight Pass gone for me.
Yeah, I mean that happens. I don't know all the inner workings of who owns what. Showtime, I've heard Showtime wants to get possibly back in maybe some kind of MMA thing. I've heard maybe moving Bellator to there
Mm.
from some people that seem to know what they're talking about on Twitter. But I don't know. I don't know what the viewership for like AXS TV was. I mean, as fight fans, we loved it. But were they
Mhm.
getting 50,000 people to watch a fight? Were they getting 300,000? Were they getting? I mean, I don't know how many people tuned in. So, it's like, could they get the same amount of viewership if they went on MTV2? I mean, that's the kind of so it's
Not
hard to
now.
say. Yeah, but like NBC Sports Network with the viewership with
I think I think MTV2 is their demographic is the same dude dancing with the suspenders and the shorts now.
But you know what I'm saying. Like when
Yeah.
Bellator was on there, they would get like 80,000 views or something like that. We're getting the same amount, 80,000 to 100,000, 120 is somewhere where NBC Sports was getting with PFL. So that's pretty that there's a lot of channels that could fit in there. I mean, the Outdoor Sports Network or something could pick up if they're only looking for 60,000 eyes to watch something, but
Yeah.
if they were used to 300, 400,000, then all of a sudden we got to start getting into, you know, bigger avenues. I don't know. I would say Fight Pass, as you say, it's got to be probably the number one contender. I'd like to see ESPN Plus. I'd like to see everything kind of move to ESPN Plus, and let's streamline what the UFC is offering. Maybe just keep Fight Pass as a library and charge like $2.99 a month or $1.99 a month just for old library stuff or something. But move all the live events to one service would be ideal for me. But we'll see. What else? Any other? I'm trying to think if we had any other real breaking news.
Did we already talk about Eddie Alvarez out of because of
Oh,
his ankle?
there you go. Yeah, I saw that today. Eddie Alvarez I didn't see the actual injury, so his ankle. He's out of the
Yeah.
finals of the one Destiny card. I believe it's October 12th in Japan for one fighting. He kind of snuck his way back into the tournament when he filled in because the guy who beat him got hurt, and then he came in, won a fight, and then advanced to the championship. And now it looks like the current champion of that division is moving into that fight. So it's a loaded card. We'll talk about that more when we get a little closer. Figure out the broadcast for it. I know it's a 2 event day in Japan, so one of them will be live, I believe, on TNT the night of the event, or because of the time change, and then one will be like in the middle of the night with the Japan thing. So we'll talk about that more. But UFC goes to Copenhagen this weekend. Some action fights, but not the biggest names on the card. Obviously, the main event: Jack Hermanson, Jared Cannonier. Interesting fight in the middleweight division. Hermanson obviously seems to be kind of be the new stud in that division, coming off a big win over Jacare. And I think he wins this fight.
Mm.
I see also he had beaten David Branch, who's another little bit news story. David Branch, who tested positive for PEDs and was released from the UFC also within the last week. But I go with Hermanson in this fight. I think his ground game will be something that'll cause Cannonier some issues.
Yeah. I mean, I thought that initially, but I do. I mean, I feel like Cannonier still has that KO power that he had when he first bursted into the UFC and made a name for himself. So I feel like he still has a puncher's chance to win. So I think I submitted that as my official pick for Sherdog. So I'll stick with Cannonier. I think he can surprise us.
Well, yeah, and he's had fights. He's had some success at heavyweight and some moderate success at light heavyweight. So he's a bigger dude who may have finally found his physical prime weight class. And obviously he had a destruction of Anderson Silva. So Yeah, that'll be interesting. That's the main event. Other guys on the card: Gunnar Nelson versus Gilbert Burns. Khalil Roundtree's fighting. OSP's on the card. Cowboy Oliveira. Kind of one of these international cards we've been getting lately, where you're not really sure what fight's going to be the one to watch, but there's likely to be a handful that we'll be talking about.
Yeah, especially
next
this
week.
card. Yeah. No, I mean, I didn't get that vibe so much over the Mexico card, but this card I've been watching it build and watching the change because Gilbert Burns is only coming in on a couple of weeks' notice to face Gunnar Nelson, and even still, I mean, after speaking to him when I spoke to him for in the summer, early in the summer, last spring, or was it for, you know, if he would stop getting pulled into these last minute fights, maybe we can get him here for an interview, but. I mean, he wants it that way. He wants to climb the ranks. So, and from what I know of him, he's never not really ready. So I don't think last minute is an issue for him. So I think that fight's going to be interesting. So we'll see. I mean, it's an early card, early for me. So that means it's earlier for you, right? Like what time you're? I think it's 2 o'clock for me. So
yes. So the prelims I think start at 8 for me, and then the main card starts at 11. I'll catch some of that. Before I get on the road and head to what really is the highlight, I believe, of MMA for the weekend, Bellator 228 at the Forum in Inglewood. The second half of the first round of the Featherweight Grand Prix,
oh yeah,
which in the main event includes Adam Archuleta versus Patricio Pitbull for the featherweight title, and then a co-main event of two MMA legends, Gegard Mousasi and Lyoto Machida. The first half of the featherweight Grand Prix was lived up to the hype, other than Campos Strauss, which was a little bit of it was a domination by Campos, but not a necessarily the most pleasant fight to watch as a fan. This one I think is going to even outdo that card. Some heavy hitters here. In my opinion, the top 3 guys, arguably maybe the top 4 guys in the whole tournament, fighting on, heck, maybe argue the top 5. One of those opening bout for the main card scheduled right now, AJ McKee Jr., undefeated 14-0, against Georgi Kanaharian. McKee's been a kind of a savant of MMA. His dad, Antonio McKee, is also fighting on the card. So for the first time in history, we have a father-son competing. And according to Tapology right now, they have listed as back-to-back fights. So that could be a pretty cool thing. I didn't really think that would be how it worked out, but hopefully it does. It would be cool to watch the father fight, then kick off the main card with AJ. I think AJ wins this fight. Georgie is a vet of the sport, and he's put on a lot of wars. But I think McKee is really poised at possibly the title shot sooner than later in this tournament.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's something to be said for and you hear the term in like pro wrestling a lot when there's a wrestler that's related to someone from another era or that precedes them a generation or so in the sport. So AJ McKee's a second generation mixed martial artist with his father, having the time that he had in, and I think there's something to be said for that knowledge of being passed down and training, especially when it's something that the Athletic had something out. I think it was today or yesterday where they interviewed them because of the whole thing with them father and son on the same card, and Antonio said that he tried to convince him to go another route, like do something else. But obviously, you're not gonna talk yourself down to your own kid unless you're a scumbag. But like he obviously thought his father was great, and now he's doing it. And usually it's the case that the younger guy's is the 2.0, the improved version, and right 14-0. It's hard to argue. I mean, I think it's gonna be Georgie's a test for him for sure. So we'll see. I mean, this is definitely gonna the one that if he's gonna catch a loss, it could be on Saturday night. But I mean, I'm sure we'll hear from you first since you're gonna be there.
Yeah, I mean, I look forward to that fight. I've seen AJ I've seen AJ fight live a handful of times. I think I was even at his debut on an early Bellator prelim a couple years back. So that'll be interesting. And I watched his dad fight 20 years
Yeah.
ago. So that'll be cool to see both of them competing again live. The next card fight, Daniel Weichel faces Sal Rogers. This is an interesting fight because Rogers is 13-2, but he hasn't really had the competition that Weichel has. But with that said, Weichel is also on a 2-fight losing streak, with losses coming in a championship fight to Pitbull and Yamauchi. But before that, he won like 10 out of 11 fights or something like that, including wins over Des Green, Pat Curran, and a couple other decent names. But I go with Weichel. I think experience will play big here. I think Rogers, this is kind of his first big name fight, bright light fight. Not necessarily fighting, under, in his home country. So I'll go with Weichel, and I'm not sure how, probably by decision, but I'll go with the veteran of 50 fights in this one.
Yeah, no, you and I are on the same page there. Weichel is somebody that is definitely somebody that I've probably seen fight a lot, especially before Comcast took away Paramount Network from me. But I remember looking forward to a lot of his stuff, and I still do. So I'm with you on that one. Just so we don't pass honorable. James Muka Barnes is also on that card. He was on this podcast a couple of weeks ago, and I wrote an article based on that conversation out on mymmanews.com soon because he's getting to run it back with an old foe of his from the amateur days in David Duran. They're on the prelims, but I mean, I'm just going back to how stacked this card is from top to bottom. I mean, not for nothing, Matt. I wish I was going with you on Saturday.
No, I'm excited for this one. As somebody who is spoiled and gets to see a lot of live MMA, this is a card that's got me from the prelims. I mean, we want to get onto the rest of the tournament, but Leandro Higo, Sean Bunch is a great fight on the prelims. Mike Jasper, who was just, in his last fight he lost, but he fought Andrei Korshkov on a main card. He fights Johnny Cisneros, who's kind of a staple of the Southern California MMA scene. That should be another interesting fight. And then AJ Agazarm, the BJJ wizard, who lost his MMA debut and then came back and won, fights on the undercard. And then, as we said, Antonio McKee, the father of AJ, also is on the card. So the prelims are good. Those will be available on DAZN and the Bellator app. So everything is available through at least DAZN on this card. The next, so now we start getting to some of the heavy hitters of the night. Darian Caldwell, the former 135-pound champ, coming off 2 losses in a row to Horiguchi, fights Henry Corrales, who's coming off of a devastating, huge knockout of Aaron Pico. This is one, Caldwell's wrestling, but it's at 135 pounds is where he's had most of his fights and most of his success in his career. I like Corrales in this fight. I think Caldwell might take him down early, but I like Corrales' heavy hands. I like that he's shown that he can go through wars and come out victorious, much like his fight with Pico, where he was hurt and they were firing on each other hard, and Corrales just had the heavy hands and caught Pico. I don't know. If I'm making a pick, I'll say 3rd round knockout by Corrales on Caldwell. If that's not what happens, then likely we'll see Caldwell do a lot of wrestling and a lot of pinning against the cage. But I like Corrales in this fight. I also kind of want him to win because I think we start setting up some really cool potential barn burner matchups. I'm not sure how much excitement Caldwell necessarily brings to a future bout. Not that that means anything for becoming a champion, but from a viewer's perspective. I'm not sure what kind of excitement. Although I know him and Pitbull have had some bad blood in the past.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously, I'm gonna go for Caldwell just because he's a local boy. You know, so I don't think I don't agree with the. I mean, I don't necessarily agree with that last loss. I understand why he got it, but you know, he's still a force. His wrestling is definitely is a problem for anybody he faces. I think the fighting at featherweight might help him more in this fight. And obviously, he's looking to come back. I mean, he fought at the Garden. Now he's going to fight. At where's this event?
The Forum in England.
At the Forum. So now, like, I feel like he wants to get back on a winning streak, and you know, being in a fight like this, I wouldn't be surprised if he grinds out a decision, because I know Corrales is no joke, either. But you know, obviously I'm playing a little bit favorite because the local connections he's got with folks around here. My brother's girlfriend went to high school with him, for crying out loud. So I can't. And he went to even after that loss. A lot of people don't know. Even after he lost in the Garden, he went to Rawway High School and still coached wrestling the following Monday. You know, like, because he made the promise that he would do it win or lose, and you know, he still showed up to do his thing. So I like the guy. I think he's talented. I think he's still a threat at Bellator. So I'm going Caldwell.
Nice. That gets us to the co-main event, which isn't a tournament fight, but it's a light heavyweight fight between two greats in MMA, Gegard Mousasi, Lyoto Machida, a rematch from a fight about 5-6 years ago now. Machida won a really close decision in the UFC. I don't see a repeat of that. I know the first fight was really close. I think Mousasi's a hard one to pick, because you don't know what's going to show up. We don't know if the killer that's going to finish him quick, or the guy who kind of shows up a little lackadaisical and lets his opponent kind of control the tempo of the fight, you could say. So, but I think Mousasi, it being a revenge bout for him, I think he comes out in this fight and takes it to Machida, and I think we see a little age on Machida in this fight, and I think the more prime fighter Mousasi figures out to pick up the win. I probably not a finish. Machida is pretty, you know, his style is obviously defensive, and he manages to avoid gigantic strikes. But I think Mousasi will just outwork him and pick up a pretty obvious decision win.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I believe I submitted that too officially to SureDog.com for my picks, the staff picks. It's hard to pick against Mousasi, just because even when he's had rough fights in Bellator, he's always been a pretty tough character, and when he does lose, he like when he lost to what's his name, the guy with the video game Tekken moves. Why am I forgetting? Uriah Hall. You know, that was a fight he got back right away, and then he left. You know, and went to Bellator. So he's somebody that's he's definitely somebody. And I know what you mean about the lackadaisical thing. So I don't know if you've been following the score, and James Lynch is over there covering it, and they actually he actually played Ninja Turtles with him and interviewed him about his fight on the Nintendo 8-bit system, the Super Entertainment System, and he just seemed so out of but I feel like that's Mousasi's, just the way he carries himself outside of, like, if you talk to him, he just seems like he's just whatever, you know. So I know what you mean by that too. It's concerning though. Like, you know, you usually want to see somebody either like Fedor, that's just, you know, stone cold and emotionless, or the complete opposite, that's somebody that's like all revved up to fight, like Tyson Fury is in boxing. And Mousasi's just like, oh, you know, he treats it like it's a chore sometimes. So
exactly.
I know what you mean. But yeah, no, I mean, we have the same pick.
Then the main event that night is the last fight of the first round of the Featherweight Grand Prix. The title fight, 5 rounds, 5 minutes. Patricio Pitbull, Juan Archuleta. Pitbull 29-4, the champ. Archuleta 23-1 on an 18-fight win streak. Whew, man, this is the fight of the night and the hardest fight in my mind to even pick.
Yeah.
Whew. I really don't want to see either guy lose. I'd like to see both guys advance in the tournament.
I hear you, man. I mean, I had to submit one, so I mean, if you want, so you can think about it. I'll tell you who that was for sure, dog. I picked Juan Archuleta, and I literally I used Google and said flip a coin, and that's how I picked it.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Pitbull, and my reason is going to be the same reason I've used a few other times. Is it's although Archuleta's obviously won titles in some smaller organizations, this is kind of his first big spotlight fight. I mean, I know he's fought on some big cards. He was at the Garden in his last fight, but this is the first one where his face is on the poster. He's going up against the champion who's coming off of knocking out the lightweight champion Michael Chandler. I mean, if you look at Pitbull's record, it's pretty friggin' amazing. I mean, before Chandler, he beat Emmanuel Sanchez, who's already advanced in the tournament. That's coming off a win over Weichel. Before that, he beat Daniel Strauss. 2 fights before that, he beat Henry Corrales. He's got another win over Weichel. He's got another win over Strauss. He beat Pat Curran, who was in the tournament. I mean, it goes on. Another win over Strauss, a win over Kanaharian. You know, I mean, he's basically already beaten the entire tournament in previous bouts. So I'll stick with the champ. I think he's one of the pound for pound greats right now. I actually think he's one of the most exciting fighters we've had in all of MMA history, really at a featherweight weight class. So I'll stick with the champ, but I think it's going to be a great fight, and I get your coin flip because that makes a lot of sense. I haven't seen any betting odds on the fight, so I don't know what the odds makers are saying.
No, man, and I'm getting tired of all these goddamn sports books only listing UFC. I think DraftKings Sportsbook out here anyway on the East Coast, I think they put up odds for Bellator stuff, but I mean I haven't seen Bellator odds since Fedor Sonnen. That's the last time I saw odds on a Bellator event. So I don't know what the hell is. I don't know if it's promotional dick riding or whatever you want to call it, but I mean, come on, man. It's a whole sport out here to watch.
Yeah, exactly. So.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that pretty much wraps us up. Big, exciting week. A lot of action. Obviously, Bellator and UFC headline that. What are you laughing at, Ed? You got something else?
No, I just had a funny glitch on my end when you were getting ready to close up there. Your face froze in a funny image. But that's what are you gonna do?
Yeah, it's that Jersey internet out there. So,
anyways, our former governor. The current one too.
Yeah. Anyways, fans can catch us at Combat Hour on Twitter, at Coast-to-Coast Combat Hour on Instagram, myself at MMA Hawk 21 on Twitter and Instagram. Follow Ed at Carbazol on Twitter and at Carbeerzol on Instagram. Ed, I'll talk to you this weekend. I'll get a hold of you when I'm out there at the fights and keep you updated on some of that preliminary action. And hopefully it's an exciting weekend.
Oh yeah, definitely watch MMA Hawk 21 on Twitter because he puts up some really dope photos at events. So make sure you give him a follow. You put him on Instagram too, right?
Yeah, the Twitter usually is quicker.
Yeah.
Instagram I'll usually follow up with, but it all depends on the Wi-Fi and reception inside the arena. Luckily, I think the forum does pretty well for me. So yeah, I hope to get as much photos up as soon as possible.
All right, cool, man. Enjoy the fights.
All right, thanks, man. Take it easy.